Sir, would you like to just stay if there's any questions from council? Sorry, our mics aren't working. So, Councillor Wong, Councillor Saprovich.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, sir, for your presentation. I didn't get to your meeting. Do you think 30 people showing up on such a massive project warrants a position to come forward?
Well, that was the first sort of workshop community consultation. But as I mentioned, if the green light is given, we want to get a direction whether this is something worth exploring and bringing forward. If that's given, then we'll of course conduct a much larger community consultation program.
Mr. Bailey, how did it come about that this gentleman can present a project to this council prior to the usual, which is he would go out, which he did, to the public, and then refer back to staff, and they in turn a report to us?
Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Soprovich, there are two council policies that you have that enable you to consider whether or not something proceeds. The first one is the interim rezoning policy, and the second one is section 2.1.15 of the official community plan. And both of those policies say, as a first stop, the general concept is don't come forward with a proposal until you've completed the local area plan, except where the proponent is offering, quote, significant social benefits, rental housing, and there's a list of things as determined by council. So it's within council's purview for you to decide if you want something to be greenlit to proceed or not. And hence this person's just asking that. They don't have an application. They're asking if they can proceed with preparing an application for future consideration. And the decision to allow them to do that is council's.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I have no more questions, but I want to comment when the motion's on the floor.
Yes, absolutely. Any more questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So there is a speakers list. It's actually a fairly short one. I'll just give a couple introductory remarks on this item just to set the context for those in attendance. First of all, council hasn't applied this interim zoning policy very often, which allows, as Mr. Bailey explained, applicants to submit projects outside of the local area plan. Thank you to everyone that's attended, as well as written counsel on this matter. Council is aware that there is strong community opposition to the proposed development. Again, I don't want to preempt the debate and okay, thank you very much. I will go to my notes then, and it is Craig Cameron, Councillor Cameron.
So I'll recommend the development proposal for Taylorwood Place as outlined in the report dated June 25th, 2019 from the Senior Community Planner not proceed for consideration. Second. And I'll just speak briefly to this, Madam Mayor. There's a few things. I don't fault staff for coming forward with this and seeking council's direction on whether we should apply our interim zoning, rezoning policy here. We have a general principle in the community that we don't proceed with significant projects in advance of local area plans, but it would be bad governance to not retain some flexibility if there were projects of particular merit or opportunities that came up. You have to keep some flexibility if the benefit to the community is substantial. Unfortunately, I think this project is of a scale, size, and impact in Cedardale that is simply not suitable for the interim rezoning policy. It's not what that policy was intended for, and in fact is something that should proceed after a local area plan, where some of the structural and contextual issues like traffic flow, which is always an issue in West Vancouver, can be debated. I also note that this project is quite dense. It's not, I wouldn't call this a modest infill. It's quite, as I said, transformative. It's similar in some respects to the Evelyn Drive neighborhood scale. So it takes a little more, I think we need a little more contextual direction about where we're going with Cedardale and how we're going to address some of the problems before we can really even consider something like this. And the community doesn't need to go through, and neither does the developer, the whole process. Before we come to that conclusion, we should just make that clear now. I will say in its response to some of the emails that I've received, there are a lot of people who enjoy their lifestyle in Cedardale, and they have nice single-family homes, and they see no benefit to themselves for changing the status quo. I understand that, and of course we all feel that way, but as we've made clear in our OCP, the status quo isn't really an option anymore in West Vancouver. We have to allow for infill. We need more housing alternatives. Evelyn Drive is full of people who have downsized in West Vancouver. It's serving the housing needs of West Vancouverites. There's a lot of West Vancouver residents that have left the community because they can't find housing that they need. So building more of what we already have more of than any community in the Lower Mainland, which is single-family housing, large single-family housing, is not the future. It's not efficient, nor does it meet the housing needs of the full range in the community. So we need rental. Purpose-built rental is certainly an amenity, and we need to look at ways of infill. At the same time, of course, we have to be doing it in a way that fits into the existing neighborhood as best as possible. But there will be compromises to be made, and there will be trade-offs, and I'm hoping we can have that discussion sooner rather than later in the context of a local area plan. And I'll just leave my comments there.
Any others? Thank you.
So, first off, I would like to ask Council that we might sit down and have a discussion whether the process that we know it as a policy now to allow an individual developer to come forward prior to any local area plans or other plans that we have. I think it's wrong to, in this day and age, to encourage that. I do believe that under the light of climate change and our natural capital asset, which we'll hear about tonight, I just no longer can accept the fact that we have an old process that says messages go out to 150 people. If we do a local area plan of the Taylorway corridor, I suspect that the entire community be notified east of Taylorway and be part of the transparent process that would come from that. What the local area plan will bring is something else. And as far as this development, to me it is, you're a very nice gentleman. You presented well. You got a lot of things happening there, but I think for me it's a little too massive right now. It doesn't mean that you can't come back later, but you'd be better off, I think, if you allow staff to go through a local area planning. I didn't support Taylorway because they didn't finish the local area planning up the hill. I thought we got to have big picture. And but I'm not opposed to the local area plan that might have some change in the area. But right now, that's the way it is.
Thank you. Councillor Wong?
Thank you, Your Worship. Certainly looking at this area, I think of other neighborhoods that have large, busy stretches of road, Canby, Granville, and Vancouver, essentially a highway going through the community. And folks don't want to live on those sort of stretches anymore unless it's in multiplex sort of developments. So certainly I think that's one consideration, but like some of my colleagues, I'm uncomfortable without having that sort of broader picture of where we want to take this community in this part of the neighborhood. We certainly have an OCP that tells us we want better transportation, we want more diversity of housing, but in terms of finer detail, I think that's sort of the missing piece. And then the local area plan will give us that information of what sort of density will that look like. Number of floors, number of buildings, number of units, that sort of thing. So certainly, while I am a huge supporter of, finding different types of housing in the community, around the table we've often sort of joked that how I'm that missing middle generation that's left in West Vancouver, the 2%. When I show up, 1% is in the room. So certainly, I think of my colleagues and my peers that are looking for different types of housing, and so I think certainly there's something something neat that can happen in this part of Taylor Way, along the entire stretch actually. But until we get that sort of finer detail, I'm uncomfortable just sort of doing what has been termed whack-a-mole planning or spot zoning. So certainly, I think having that bigger picture will certainly better inform us as a community, as a council, as to what goes best where.
Councillor Thompson?
Okay, is it working? Yeah. I'm more inclined to want to look at a project like this. The local area plan could take a while to come along with a big parcel like this, and I understand there's a few in the area. But I think what I would be looking for is more diversity on spot, more mixed use, commercial, perhaps even a coffee shop that the locals could walk to and enjoy, a drugstore or a small grocery store, something like that, mixed in with different types of housing or a healthcare facility, employee housing, a lot more diversity and benefit to the community. Even though Park Royal's right down the street, it'd be nice just to walk a block or two and pick up a few things. So I appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'll just say a few things. I won't go on too long, I promise. This policy is a good policy in that it does allow council to look at special projects and kind of not cut off your nose to spite your face by pushing everything way out. So it does allow us that flexibility, but I think to invoke the policy, it definitely has to be the right project. I did go to the initial meeting with the community, whenever that was, 18 months ago. It's a bit of a blur over the last year, as you can imagine. And there was actually a small group, and I wouldn't say that there was a lot of residents in the neighborhood. It was a mixture from across the community. And I guess when I went to that, I went away having expectations about what this project might look like. And I have to be honest, when I saw this, it wasn't consistent with what I expected. I did expect, like Councillor Thompson mentioned, more of a creative mix. I completely agree with Councillor Cameron. We do not need any more single-family houses. They are unaffordable. We're losing population because people are trying to downsize. We can't attract employees. So we don't need single family. We do have to look at using this site for other than single family. So, but I expected more of a mix of ground-oriented, that missing middle, the townhouses, the row houses. Maybe there's an apartment building in there as well, and maybe that's rental, and maybe it's even non-market rental. The world is changing so quickly that now developers are even coming in with all rental as a base proposal, because that's what the market is looking for. So I won't say anything more, but I don't support this project. It looks to me like it's shoehorned in there. There's not enough creativity. There's not enough respect for the character of the neighborhood. And I hope that feedback is helpful to anyone considering this again in the future. Okay, I'll call the question. We've got the motion. All in favor, opposed, carried. Thank you.